I was very, very blessed to be able to experience Mary's first apparition in Medjugorje for the year 2024. And although that experience is very spiritual and amazing in of itself, I believe that I had a spiritual experience the day prior, which potentially has opened my mind to seeing what the purpose of it all was. When I say what the purpose of it all was, is it has been mentioned, I've read it, I've heard this, I've heard the priest, Father Leon in Medjugorje, say it, that it was a very unusual call to have the pilgrims go to Apparition Hill to climb the mountain, because it hasn't happened in many, many years. I tried looking for the last time it happened, and I couldn't find anything besides the original dates of the apparition back in the 80s. Perhaps it's happened since then. I've seen where some of the apparitions happen at the Blue Cross, which is at the base, but I couldn't find anything where people actually climbed onto the hill. And so perhaps if one of you knows if it has happened in more recent times where Mary has called people to climb the hill, perhaps you can share it in the comments, but I wasn't able to find anything in my research. So it was a very unusual call. And I had a spiritual experience the day prior that I'm going to go ahead and talk to you about. And I believe it gives me insight into the purpose of it all, the purpose of so many pilgrims being called to the hill and being called to pray for 3 hours. And so there's 3 hours of prayer. Mary requested it to be for her intentions. So we're praying for her intentions. And then afterwards, she prayed over us and she prayed for our intentions. So there's this give and take happening. We're praying for her intentions. She's praying for our intentions. So I'm going to go ahead and read it since the official account of what happened came out. Obviously in my original account, I told you how it was from my memory, but now I have the more precise words, precise description, and so I'm going to share that. So on January 1st, 2024, this is the official account. Our Lady came very happy this evening. She prayed over all of us and for our intentions. Then Our Lady said, "Thank you for having responded to my call and praying for my intentions. You will not regret it, neither you nor your children and your children's children." Our Lady prayed over us and for our intentions for a long time. Then she blessed us and left. All right, so that's the official account of what happened. So the spiritual experience I had, and please understand that this is something I experienced interiorly. This is something that, I have to sort of use my mind to project out. I think it might be connected. I don't know. But it's just my own personal observation. And so you don't have to agree with me. Don't feel like you need to agree with me. As it is, the Catholic Church doesn't require anyone to believe in the apparitions of Medjugorje. I personally choose to believe them, but you're not required to. And the Church does allow official pilgrimages to happen in Medjugorje. Even though it has not officially declared that it's true, the Church does allow official pilgrimages from priests to go there. So what I experienced the day prior is, I'll start out with this sort of background information. I made a video and I've uploaded it here on this channel. Some of you might find it interesting, some of you it might not be quite correlating to what you're interested in. But the video was was about how the family reflects the Trinity. And I have a slightly different perspective than what I've seen other people use. And I go into the biblical quotes for why I view this, and I've shared it with many priests, missionaries. I've not had anyone push back and say, no, it's an incorrect way of viewing it. Perhaps the best response I received was from one missionary who said that there are many reflections of the Trinity, in the family and human life. And so the fact that this might be a slightly different sort of view on how the family reflects the Trinity is perfectly acceptable and perfectly fine. But what is interesting, very specifically, is that I had it come to my mind that I wanted to do this, and I did it without realizing what day the 31st was. And I realized what day the 31st was when I went to Mass, and I found out it was the feast day of the Holy Family. And so it's celebrating the Holy Family, and more than just celebrating the Holy Family, it's celebrating all families. And so I find it interesting that I had this desire to talk about how the family is a reflection of the Trinity without even realizing what day it was. So there's that. I believe that was God's work there. But there's another interesting phenomenon that happened, I believe was a spiritual phenomenon. And that phenomenon was, I remember, is before I even went to Mass, I had this sense. It was a very strange sense. It was almost as though I could feel God was angry. It wasn't like I felt like he was mad at me, like I was feeling it immediately. It just felt like off in the distance, like spiritually distant from me. I could feel that God's anger was growing. And then I went to Mass. Side note, one other thing that happened that day, because I felt this sense of wrath, I ended up putting it, everything on me. My scapular. I have an oblate cross that's relatively large in size, about 3.5 inches long or so. I wore that on me, putting all those spiritually protective things on me before I went to Mass, just because of how I was being influenced by feeling this sense of like God's angry, and the biblical verses came to mind of those times that God has had wrath, such as on Sodom and Gomorrah, and just those images came to my mind, and this idea of I don't want to see God's wrath, right? His wrath is holy; it's not to be observed, and all these ideas kind of came to my mind before I even went to Mass at 10 a.m. on the 31st. And so then when I went to the 10 a.m. English Mass in Medjugorje, it was a great homily, but the homily was they're pretty direct. They're you could say that they're the type of homily that you would not hear in most places in the United States, because people would get angry, because it's very direct, and it's very direct about sin is sin, and the importance of the family unit, and one of the things that's happened in the church that I don't want to talk too much about, because it's not really in the purpose of my channel or part of the purpose of this particular video, is that there's this Vatican document that has come out that has caused a lot of division between bishops, just within the church hierarchy in of itself, and amongst priests. And this particular document is the Fiducia Supplicans, which allows the blessing of couples that are in situations that the church doesn't approve of, but it allows the couples to be blessed, even though that union is not approved of by the church. So there's been a lot of division over that. And the homily went into some of that. So what I'm thinking, this is the thought I have, is on the 31st, that same day, I felt, what I believed to have been, the wrath of God, distant, far off, but I had a sense of it. What I believe is that because it was the day of the Holy Family, it's the day celebrating families, is that to a degree, perhaps God was angry because of the current state of the world in which we are attacking families, we are hurting families, we are destroying the image of the family by saying that the family can be something other than the way God gave it to us in Genesis. And so, especially the way Mary did this, she called all of us to go up on the mountain, she called us to pray for 3 hours, and then afterwards she was happy, and then the message she gave, that you will not regret it, neither you, nor your children, and your children's children. For me, that originally, I think in terms of, she's blessing our families, which she is, saying that our families have been blessed. But even more than that, you could say that when she says you will not regret it, perhaps those 3 hours of prayers did something very powerful that stopped or prevented something from happening that would have damaged our families. Perhaps by saying you will not regret it, she's saying that if we had not gone to the mountain, if we had not spent 3 hours in prayer, then perhaps something would have happened that we would have regretted. And perhaps that's the reason why it came as this sort of last minute call, right? Just the day before, she said, I want everyone to go do this. And we went and we did it. Perhaps it was because she wanted to stop something terrible, especially where we're facing this attack on the family happening in the world. And so I wanted to share that with all of you and say that that's personally what I'm believing at this point happened, was that the prayers were very specifically for the protection of families and the family unit and the family as established by God. And the reason why when she came, when she appeared and she was very happy and very joyous, the reason why she was very joyous is because the prayers worked. The prayers were able to bring about what she was requesting. That's why she was very joyous. And furthermore, the rain, I didn't see this in this account. The article I read, it just said it's raining all day, but very, very specifically. And even though it was, a bit of off and on rain and a little bit of, some sprinkling happening, very, very light sprinkling during the off times, I went up the mountain at 2:30, and there's just barely even a little sprinkle, basically just mist. It was basically nothing. And so I was on the mountain for a half hour. And then right on the dot, we started praying at 3 o'clock, and it just started pouring. So I'd been there for a half hour, and right on the dot, 3 o'clock, it started pouring. And it did have some periods during that prayer time where it would die down, and then it would start back up again, die down, and start back up again. But it remained raining that whole time. And then 5 minutes before the apparition, it just completely stopped. And what I'm thinking is perhaps part of that is, to a degree, it kind of shows the tears of heaven for just the state of our world, for the state of what's going on the attack on the family, and for it to stop. And then for Our Lady to come happy, right? It's that happiness, that joy of what we're able to do by way of prayer, about how we can avert and stop evil things from happening by way of our prayer, right? If we just commit to prayer, as Our Lady has said, you can suspend the laws of nature, right? Through prayer, through fasting. And so this is my own personal thoughts, is that it's possible that by responding to Mary's call, we averted something bad from happening. And as a result, we will not regret it, neither us, nor our children, nor our children's children. And then she gave us a blessing, and she prayed for our intentions and left. So this is just my thoughts over it, based off of what I had experienced today prior. And I just want to share it for all of you to think about, and obviously make the decisions for yourselves on what you believe, what you think the purpose was of her first apparition of the new year, 2024. So with that said, let's go ahead and just ask that Mary be introduced into our lives, Mary come into our lives and help us draw closer to her Son, Jesus, right? Because ultimately that's what Mary's doing, is drawing us to her Son. So with that said, let's go ahead and invite Mary into our lives by saying, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. And I will also give this salutation that is connected to the Oblates of Mary Immaculate, which is a religious order that I myself may be joining, potentially, God willing. Their salutation is, Praise be Jesus Christ and Mary Immaculate. God bless you all. Take care.